back from the dead.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Mickey C and welcome to another League of Legends video. Now recently a player on the North American server has received some attention thanks to his 95% win rate on his Smurf account, which is pretty much a Yasuo only account. He has played a few other games with some other champions, but he does have a 95% win rate. It's actually dropped down to 93% win rate, as you can see there on the screen. But his main account, which is in Challenger, is currently rank 13 and it was rank 11 yesterday. And on his main account he mainly plays Yasuo as well, so he's obviously a very good Yasuo player. So I thought I'd do a bit of a guide on how he plays Yasuo in terms of his build and his masteries and runes, etc. So let's get straight into the guide. Actually, before we get into the guide, I forgot to mention this guy actually has a stream, a Twitch stream, so I'll link that stream in the description and you guys can go check him out. He said he's going to start streaming in the near future, in like 1 to 2 weeks, so go follow him on Twitch if you're interested in watching any of his gameplays. So we'll start with his masteries, and over the last 3 days he's pretty much only been going with this page. As you can see, 18 points in ferocity and 12 points in cunning, with the keystone mastery being fever of battle. He never ever goes warlords, or from the games I've seen he's never gone warlords at all, but over the last 3 days he's been going with this page. But prior to that he went with a slightly different page, and it was the only changes are, instead of going 12 points in cunning, he was going 12 points in resolve. So maybe with the new mage update he's decided to switch it up a little bit, or maybe he's just trying out a new mastery page. I'm not exactly sure, but either way both pages are probably pretty good to go with. If you want some more defensive stats, I would recommend the 12 points in resolve. If not, you can go with the 12 points in cunning instead. The only other mastery page he went with was this one here, where he has emphasis on the Thunderlord's Decree. I wouldn't recommend it though, because he only played with this mastery page in probably less than 5% of his games. Now let's take a look at his rune page on his Smurf account. This is pretty much similar to what he has on his main account, so I'll just go through the one on his Smurf account. So for reds he's got all attack speed, but he does have that one critical chance. I guess that's just for a meme. And then for yellows he's got 4 armor yellows and 5 scaling health yellows. Most people would either go with armor on Yasuo or scaling health, but he's gone with a mixture of the two. And then for greater quintuses he's got all attack speed, and for blues he's got magic resist. So moving on to his summoner spells. Now in the mid lane he would either take exhaust or ignite, and he would take exhaust against champions such as Talon, Zed, Annie, Fizz, Victor and Riven, and then he would take ignite against Azir, Twisted Fate, Gangplank and LeBlanc. He never really took TP in the mid lane, but every time he played in the top lane he would take TP. So from this you can tell that in winning matchups he would usually take ignite, and in losing matchups he would usually take exhaust. So now let's talk about his items. So his starting items pretty much in every game was a Doran's Blade and a red pot. I never saw him go with a Doran's Shield or a longsword and 3 pots. It was always the Doran's Blade and just the 1 pot. As for his core items, in pretty much every game he would go with Phantom Dancer and Trinity Force. He very rarely went with Static Shiv over Phantom Dancer or Infinity Edge over Trinity Force. But it should also be noted that Phantom Dancer and Trinity Force weren't always his first 2 items. So for example, against an AP champion such as Fizz or Annie, who rarely beats Yasuo in lane, he would often go with a Zeal followed by a Hex Drinker and then into a Phantom Dancer, or sometimes he will even go with the Hex Drinker first item and then into a Zeal followed by the Phantom Dancer or maybe Trinity Force. And another situation he would do this in is if his enemy laner is AP and so is the enemy jungler, he would go with this similar route. So for example, in this game you can see on screen he's up against Lissandra and the enemy jungle is Fiddlesticks and the top laner was Echo as well. So those are 3 AP champions. So in this game he went with a Zeal followed by a Hex Drinker into a Phantom Dancer, then a Trinity Force, and then he got a Banshee's Veil, and then he moved into a QSS to upgrade later into a Mercurial Scimitar. So that's an example of a build against a heavy AP team, but against a heavy AD team he would look to go for either a Randuin's or a Sunfire Sunfire Cape. Lately he's been going for Randuin's because Sunfire Cape recently got nerfed, but prior to that he was going more with the Sunfire Cape. Sometimes if they got a lot of AD he would go for both items, and occasionally in like 1 or 2 games I've seen him go for a Dead Man's Plate or Guardian Angel as well. As for boots, against heavy CC teams he would go with Merc Treads, and against teams with a lot of auto attacks he would go with Tabbies. The only other boots he would go with is Swifty boots, and I've never seen him go with Berserker Greaves, so he just sticks to those 3 boots, and for the most part it is probably Merc Treads followed by Tabbies and then Swifty boots. Finally, he would often go for a Frozen Mallet as a 4th or 5th item, which is pretty interesting. Most other Yasuo players wouldn't really go for a Frozen Mallet, so he much prefers the Bruiser type Yasuo build. He doesn't really like the Glass Cannon Yasuo build or the Full Tank Yasuo build. So in conclusion, he would adapt his build to the game he's up against, but for the most part his 2 core items are Phantom Dancer and Trinity Force, and his most common final item build would probably be Phantom Dancer, Trinity Force, Mercury Treads, Maul of Malmortius, Frozen Mallet, and a Mercurial Scimitar. Last but not least, his skill order. So in range matchups he would start with E, and in melee matchups he would start with Q, which you see a lot of players do, but in every single matchup he will always max E first, and then he'll max Q second, followed by his Wind Wall, which is his W, and obviously he would max his ultimate whenever he can. And this is what a lot of high elo Yasuo players would do. So if you're a Yasuo player that is still maxing Q first, I highly recommend against it. You should be maxing E first in every situation. It provides more mixed damage because his E has an AP ratio, and it also provides greater mobility for Yasuo, and mobility is really good on Yasuo because the more he moves, the quicker his flow increases to gain his shield. So if you max E, it's more likely your shield will be up a lot more often. Ladies and gentlemen, this is going to be the end of the video. If you liked the video, let me know by leaving a like, and don't forget to subscribe.